Hey, everybody. It's great to be back another week. Last week, I put out basically every weekday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Don't think I was able to get to one on Friday, but I was able to put out a video every day discussing a different aspect of education, classroom management, which has been my primary focus over the last dozen or so years as I've been practicing as a social worker, both in the school setting and in the private practice setting as well. And I wanted to outline this week what we were going to talk about, and I'd like to cover um, what seems to be the four pillars of classroom management. There are four basic pillars that hold up, that support classroom management. The first two are kind of foundational, where it applies to everybody in the class the same. Um, and the second two are kind of more on a case by case basis. Different kids in the class are going to get them differently depending on various factors, which we will obviously discuss in greater detail. I really, before I start, want to thank everybody that watched some of the videos last week. We had over the course of the week, our videos were watched by over 5,000 educators across the world. So that was really, really amazing for really the first week that I was doing it as consistently as I was. I dabbled in it beforehand, but last week was really an eye-opener to see the kind of response that I had gotten. So thank you to all of those who joined. And really my goal is to provide value for you, to give you some perspectives, a different way of looking at it perhaps than what you're used to. I am available for questions. And if you have any ideas or subjects that you would like for me to talk about on future episodes, you can let me know about that. You can leave them as comments in the videos here, or you can message me on Facebook as well. Those are two very easy ways that you can do it. I will also be posting these videos on YouTube, so you can leave comments in the videos on YouTube too, if that's where you're watching this. But my main focus here is Facebook, because we've got a great community of educators here on various different groups that I'm connected with and get to hear from and talk to. So it's really, really fantastic. So let me just give you a basic outline of what we're going to be discussing, the four pillars of classroom management. The first pillar of classroom management is attendance. Now, attendance is obviously basic, fundamental. Everybody knows that if you don't come to school, you're not going to do well in school. It's so obvious. I sometimes wonder about the research, because if you need to prove that not showing up to school isn't good, then there is a problem. It's so fundamental. If you're not here, you're not going to know what's going on. But there's some questions, there's some questions that we need to ask, and that's what we're going to delve into today. The second pillar is, and this is something that I've spoken about last week a little bit, but we'll obviously get more into it this week, and that is positive feedback and encouragement. One of the principals last week commented, there's this famous saying that they say in education, they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And education is really about relationships. It's really about building people. It doesn't really matter how you teach somebody math or science. What matters is that you show them that you care about them, that you believe in them, that you build them as people. And everybody who's in a classroom or works with kids can attest to this on their own. There obviously is a plethora of research on this as well, but I like to look to the research when my own experience is not able to guide me properly. Obviously, you have to have a foundation of research that guides that guides you before you get into it. But once you have a certain amount of experience and you have a good peer support group, you could usually know intuitively what's important. And it's all about relationships and giving positive feedback to kids and encouraging kids to push themselves to learn and to grow as best as they can. That's the second pillar. And those two apply to everybody. The second two pillars that are important, the first of the second two, which is the third. The third pillar is misbehaviors, dealing with kids that are struggling. I saw a great post the other day, went something along the lines of, the kids are not giving you a hard time, they're having a hard time, especially now in this pandemic. I'm sorry that I don't remember who posted this off the top of my head. It's escaping me right now. I like to give credit to, when I see things, from people, I like to credit them. So I don't remember who posted that. Maybe I'll put it in the comments afterwards if I can go take a look at that. Especially now during this pandemic, we're all stressed out at different levels for different reasons. And kids, for the most part, the way they express their emotional difficulties is through acting out. And we need to understand that better. And we need to know how to respond to that in a very measured and precise way if we're going to conserve our energy and our resources to really maximize them. So dealing with misbehaviors is the third pillar. And the fourth pillar is obviously classroom engagement, academic performance. School is always an institution of learning. It's always a place where learning should be happening. It's not, in the words of Jack Spatola, a good friend of mine who is now retired principal of one of the top schools in New York City for over 30 years, he said, school is not a babysitting service. The kids come to learn and we need to teach them. So that is the reason why it comes last, is obviously not because it's not the least important, it's the most important, but we can focus the best on that when the other three pillars are in place. Obviously, if kids are not showing up, if we don't have good attendance, performance, then the academic performance is going to be lacking. So these are the four pillars, and I'm going to discuss each of them on a different day. Today is Monday. We're going to talk about attendance. Stay tuned for tomorrow, God willing, around the same time. I hope to be able to talk about positive feedback and encouragement. The next day, Wednesday, I hope to talk about misbehaviors. And on Thursday, I hope to talk about academic performance, formative assessment, so on and so forth, academic engagement, and how we can improve that, because really that's not something that's completely in our control. Again, the first two things are things, not attendance is not completely in our control, but we need to keep track of that. We need to ask certain questions about that. And let's jump right into it for today. So there are 6 questions about attendance that I'd like to explore. We'll take them one at a time. The first question that is always important, whenever you're dealing with a system, any kind of education system, it's not tailored to the individual. Systems by definition are tailored to the general audience, and there's always going to be exceptions to the rule. Every rule has its exception, and that rule has its exceptions too. But when it comes to systems, there's always going to be cracks in the system. There are always going to be kids that are able to get through. And the question is, what are the cracks in the attendance system? So there are 2 basic problems that I have come across when it comes to cracks in the attendance systems. And again, please comment and let me know what you think about this, and let's get a better discussion going on beyond the video. We could definitely have a long thread of conversation on this. One crack in the attendance system is that we're not distinguishing between attendance as an objective measure and attendance as a subjective measure. What do I mean by that? What I mean is that if a student comes late for a good reason, so obviously that's not as bad as a student coming late without a good reason. So if I have a dentist appointment in the morning and I come late to school, obviously it's understandable. I need to go to the dentist at some time, and I couldn't make an appointment outside of school hours, so I needed to take some time off of school to go to the dentist. That could be acceptable. If I just didn't show up because I didn't feel like it, it's not acceptable. So those are 2 different kinds of attendance, and we grade them differently. The problem is that attendance is first and foremost objective. If you're not going to be there, you're not going to be learning. You can't compare someone who missed a day of school and got their notes from their friend to someone who actually showed up. And if they could, then that's a problem on our end, because it should not be so easy to catch up as to just speak to your friend and get the notes and catch up. There needs to be some value of coming and spending the day in school. If we're not doing that, then we're not providing value in school. So we need to, when we mark attendance, and I think this was first brought to my attention at the attendanceworks.org website. Hetty Chang is becoming a close friend of mine. We've already done a couple of podcasts together. So she speaks about in her organization, it's not just her, but she's the driving force of it. Attendance, there's excused attendance, there is not excused attendance, but they're both missing class, and we need to keep track of that. The second thing that I find is that very often teachers will take attendance at the beginning of the day, but then kids will leave the classroom. Kids are going to go out, to, whether it's to the bathroom, to the nurse, or for an errand or whatever. And there's no record of that, or very, very poor record of that. Now, we know, the research shows us that if a student is missing 10% or more of school, that's already considered chronic absence, and that's more likely than not to show up in academic performance. It's going to impact academic performance. 10% is not a lot. 10% is a small amount. You know, if somebody gets a 90 on a test, that's great, that's an A. But when it comes to attendance, 90% is pretty much a failure. So if you're measuring 90% and you have, let's say, a class that's a 45-minute period and you're missing 5 minutes, you're already up there. You're already up there, you know, at the almost 90%. So it's pretty bad. And there's no record of this. So these are basically two cracks in the attendance system that I have noticed, where I've seen kids that have struggled and those struggles have gone unnoticed. And I'm most concerned about struggles that go unnoticed, because those are the struggles that become bigger struggles. And it's only once they're noticed that we can address them. And usually by the time it comes to me as a social worker, it's already a much, much bigger problem. And if we can figure out ways of noticing these much earlier, it would obviously be beneficial to everybody. So that's one question. Now, another question is, how do we look at trends in attendance? And the great example of this is always a story where I had run into a teacher one day in the hallway, and I asked her how a particular student of hers, who was a client of mine, was doing. And she said, do you know that he comes 20 minutes late every day to class? And I was really surprised to hear that, not for the reason that the teacher was expecting. The reason why I was surprised to hear that was because the previous year, this was early in the beginning of the year, the previous year, this student was coming 2 hours late every day. And it was a real struggle. We had meetings with the parents. We did a lot of work to try to get this kid to come earlier to school. It was complicated and it was tough, and we were not very successful. And the next year, the same kid was coming only 20 minutes late, which is an hour and 40-minute improvement. And obviously this kid was not getting the recognition for the effort, was not getting the recognition for the improvement of coming so much earlier. It was going completely unnoticed. When I mentioned this to the teacher, she was flabbergasted. She's like, wow, I can't believe that, it completely changes my attitude towards this. And again, when you're looking at trends, it's so important. When you get a snapshot, you don't know, are you, moving uphill? Are you coming downhill? Are you moving in the right direction? Are you moving in the wrong direction? You can have two kids, let's say, score a 75 on a test. And for one kid, it's an amazing accomplishment because they're trending up. They were failing in the beginning of the year, and we're getting together and we're helping them and giving them the support and encouragement that they need. And they're moving their test scores up, and now they're at a 75. And you can have another kid that started out the beginning of the year getting hundreds, and for some reason is now slipping and down to a 75. And that's pretty concerning. So it's the same test score, but moving in different directions. And it's so important to look at trends in attendance. How late are people coming? We don't even keep track of how much time is missed for lateness. If someone's coming 10 minutes late versus 20 minutes late versus an hour late, all these different trends that are so important, we need to look carefully at them. We need to be able to identify them. Now, one of the big things that Hetty Chang talks about when she talks about improving attendance is enlisting the family, getting the outside of school support. And it's so important because we don't know. Eventually we do know, but starting out at the beginning of the year, it's very hard to know why kids are missing so much school. They're not coming to school, but we don't know if they're, like we said earlier, they might be legitimate reasons. There might be reasons that they just can't make it. Maybe they go through a rough neighborhood. Maybe they're home helping their parents with other siblings. Maybe there's, God knows what. There are so many different reasons why kids might not be able to come to school, and there's the outside of school factor. And that's something that we really need to look at. We really need to pay attention to and identify what is it that kids need to get to school on time, and what outside of school factors are contributing to these kids not being able to come to school. And even once they come to school, to be settled and to stay in the classroom for the entire duration of the learning. There is recess, there is lunch, there are times built into the schedule that allow kids to get out and to play and to explore the things that they need to do. But we need to take a look at that when that's not happening. What are the outside of school factors? The next question, the fourth question, I should say. Again, the first question is, what are the cracks in the attendance system? The second question is, how do we look at trends in attendance? The third question is, how do we deal with outside factors? The fourth question is, what about real-time attendance? And I mentioned this beforehand. So you have a kid who comes to school, he takes attendance, the teacher takes attendance, he's sitting in his classroom, and then he raises his hand and he says he needs to go to the bathroom, and he's gone for the next 25 minutes. Okay. And obviously during this time, he's missing instruction time, he's missing class time, and there's no record of it because he was here for attendance. In the system, he's marked as present. Obviously, the school is getting their funding if it's based, even if it's based on attendance. That's, that box has been checked. That's no problem. But here's a kid who's missing 20 minutes of class time. And this is what I like to call real-time attendance. It's not enough to be present when attendance is being taken. You need to actually be present in the moment, every moment of the day. So we should really be taking attendance throughout the day. And really every time a person leaves, we should be marking that they left. And when they come back, we should be marking that they come back. But this is obviously a near impossible job. So how do we deal with that? And is that something that, that is really a problem? Maybe some teachers will say, listen, I don't have a problem with real-time attendance. When I take attendance, every kid, nobody ever asks to leave my classroom. So, if you're one of those teachers, then definitely let me know in the comments. You can give me a thumbs up. Yeah, I never have this problem with attendance. That's fantastic. But if you do have a problem with that, where kids are, let's say, going to the nursery, you send them out for an errand to make copies of something or something like that, if it's an older kid and they just disappear. So if you've ever had that problem, so let us know about that in the comments as well. Let's figure out, how do we deal with real-time attendance. Question number 5 is, when do we start asking if there is a problem with attendance? And again, if a kid misses a day, okay, so they missed that day, it might not be a problem. It might be a problem. How do you know? So again, the research shows that September which is the first month of the year, is a pretty good indicator. I think it's something like 4 times. If a kid is absent 4 days in September, there is a 50% likelihood that this child will fail. So that's pretty shocking. And the question is, again, at what point, if a kid is absent 4 times in a month, is that something you're going to call a meeting now with the parents and try to find out what's going on? It's a little hard to say that that's what happens all the time. 4 times doesn't seem like a lot, but the research shows that it is important. It's not just that, it's that, if we're talking about 10% being called chronically absent, that means we really need to start looking at attendance data before 10%, because once you're at 10%, that's already, that's like saying, the example that I gave before, you have a kid that's doing well and you're not going to make an issue of it until he's, scoring a 70. A kid who's scoring in the high 90s, who drops down to the high 80s, that should right away be a flag. Anytime you have a significant correction, that right away asks to be examined and to be looked at. So we need to know, when to, how often do we look at this? Do we, is it this once a week that we sit down and look at the attendance data to see which kids need attention around attendance? And at what point do we become concerned? So those are, the 5th and 6th questions are really kind of one. I just wrote out a couple of notes before we started here. How often do we ask ourselves if there's an attendance problem? How often are we looking at the attendance data? Are we just handing it in and then forget about it? We don't think about it again? Or do we think about it every day, every week, every month, every quarter, every semester? I don't know. You tell me what you think we should be doing. And that's the 5th question. And then the 6th question is, when we become concerned about it. So these are all questions that obviously have come to me through my experience, through working with kids, with teachers, with principals, with everybody within the system, parents especially. And when I developed ClassStars, one of the very first things that I wanted to focus on is attendance, because like I mentioned beforehand, I think there's a real gap when it comes to real-time attendance. And I want to jump in here and show you what we've done to try to address some of these issues. We're going to do a quick screen share on the ClassStars. And here is a demo class as usual. Let's start the class. Okay, and what I'm going to do here is actually, when you start a class, you can title the class and give it a descriptive name. So we're going to talk about, this class is going to be called Pillar Number 1, Attendance Issues. Okay, so that's what we're going to call this session. We're going to start the session. It's starting now. It's going to be a pretty quick session, because all we're going to do is cover how we look at different attendance things. Then we're going to come back and look at the dashboards and see how we do that. So I know that there are a lot of schools that are using other systems for inputting attendance. We just wanted to make everything really super simple, as quick and simple as possible. So once you start a class, this is your class. You can set them up however they sit in the classroom. everyone is assumed to be here because that's the way it should be. And if someone is absent, all you do is tap on their picture. Now, again, you're supposed to use your finger here, and it makes it a lot more intuitive when you're holding a tablet, an iPad, or an Android tablet, or a Windows tablet. It's on all the app stores, and you just tap the kids that are absent. So we'll mark these 4 kids in the corner here, absent. Okay. Now, if somebody comes in late, you can tap on them a second time and they're marked late. If you tap on them a third time, they'll go back to being, toggled as regular. So as just being present. So you could tell the kids that are outside of the class by their faded picture, and the kids that are present in the class have a non-faded picture. Okay, when you're done with that, you tap end attendance, and we're just going to go straight to class. You tap this middle button, that brings you to class. Okay, so now you could see very clearly in real time right now who is in my classroom, who is not in my classroom. Everyone is here except for Satara Sima and Jess Gavin. Everybody else is here. Now, what if one of these people come in late? You double tap on them, and then you get the pop-up menu, and I can either mark them late or mark them not absent. So let's say that Jess walked in a couple of minutes late. So I tap that he's late. Now, every tap, every event that I record here is timestamped. So if I later on tap on Jess, I'm going to get a pop-up here, and I'm going to see that his last attendance event was that he was late to class, returned less than a minute ago, and he was less than a minute late. I can also mark him excused. So I'm actually distinguishing between an excused late and a non-excused late. And I'll show you soon in the dashboards how we can filter those out and look at only the excused lates or only the non-excused lates when we want to drill down and really examine how Jess or anybody has been performing when it comes to attendance. But I can mark on any lateness, and I can do it during class, or I can do it after class. I can do it at any time. Now, that's just for marking traditional present, late, absent. Those are the 3 choices, right? Typically, I remember back when I was in school, P for present, L for late, A for absent was the good old-fashioned roll book. That's how it worked. Now, what if somebody needs to leave the room? Okay, there are legitimate reasons for leaving the room, and there are not legitimate reasons for leaving the room. But even when you're leaving the room for legitimate reasons, if you're missing too much class time, that's going to be a problem. And again, too much is not that much. 10% is already chronic absence, and there's no reason to think that missing 10% of each day across a period of time is different than missing just 10% of days across a period of time. It's the same 10%. So the way we mark real-time attendance here, and this is the simplest thing, we've got 2 modes here. We have the single swipe mode, which is if you tap here, it toggles this, and you'll see the blue wheel. Now, if I slide any student to the right, it just marks that they left, and it timestamps everything. So I just marked that Bobby went out, and obviously, if I want more specificity, I tap on this, and now I can get I get the wheel full function mode, and I get this pop-up. Obviously, if she was absent, if Valentine was absent and I didn't mark her absent, then I forgot, I can mark her absent here. I can mark that she went out to the restroom for services, for discipline, for an errand, a quick 5-minute break, excused, medical. So if she goes out to the nurse, I'm going to tap on this, and now I know she went out to the nurse. And obviously, if this is something that is constantly happening, this trend, you're going to see it in the charts. You're going to see it in the dashboards. Now, let's say another student goes out for a quick 5-minute break. And the quick 5-minute break is an important one. And the reason why a quick 5-minute break is so important is because there are some kids that we work with that have, let's say, ADHD or something like that. And you want to give them a quick 5-minute break because they need to get their energy out. They're just too bouncing off the walls in the classroom. You want to give them some space. The problem is that the research shows that kids with ADHD are really, really lousy at time management. So we send them out for a 5-minute break, and they're usually brought back into the class by some adult somewhere after a half an hour or more. And that kind of puts us in a tough spot because here we're trying to extend ourselves and be nice to this kid and bend the rules for them. And then we just end up getting in trouble for it because we let this kid out of the room. So a quick 5-minute break, you can mark that and actually see if it's working. Is the kid coming in after 5 minutes or close, or whatever the expectations are, you can get an idea of that. Now, if I tap on a student who's out, I'll get the same pop-up as I got before, and I get to know how long they've been out. She's gone out for medical attention a minute ago, and Bobby has gone out, also left the room for, and just left the room because it was on single swipe, but it was a minute ago. As time goes on, I see exactly what's going on. And the great story that I have to tell about this is this high school teacher who a kid went out to the bathroom and came back 9 minutes later, And as soon as he came back, she called him out on it, not in any kind of, upset or disciplinary way, just letting him know, you were out for 9 minutes now. And his response was, no, I wasn't. I was only out for 2 minutes. And she said, no, I have it recorded right here, 9 minutes. And she said from that day on, the entire, classroom decorum was different because there was accountability. They knew she didn't have to raise her voice. She didn't have to threaten. She didn't even need to give an incentive. It just was obvious that when you keep track of things, people pay attention differently. So when somebody comes back, you double tap on them and they're back, as simple as that. And then you have that marked here that she was out for 2 minutes, and that's okay. It could be that it's okay to be out for 2 minutes. By the way, those little menus that pop up when you tap on a student will go down by itself after a couple of seconds, or you could just tap anywhere on the screen to make it go away. So this is how you take real-time attendance during class. And when you're done with your class, you press this button. This takes you out of class back to the dashboard. So let's close the class. We had a 9-minute class here. And now we're going to come back to the dashboards. Okay, now here is where you'd have your list of classes. This is just a demo class. You can set up your own class, and you can have more than one class. That's coming really, really soon. But for now, you get one class. The free version gives you a demo class that you can practice right away with, plus one other class. So you can select the date range of what you want to look at. Right now, we're looking at October 12th through October 19th, but let's take a look at all sessions. And that's going to show up here. This is a semester that started September 9th, 2020 until today. And you can see that next to every child, there are 3 icons, and they're basically in traffic light colors. And the traffic light works like a regular traffic light. If they're doing well, it's going to be green. If they're doing poorly, it's going to be red. And if they're doing in between, then they're going to be yellow. So the bottom icon next to each kid is the attendance icon. Okay, so you could see that Sitara, Jess, Colin, Elijah, Frankie, all these kids are having a hard time with attendance. And this is random data. These are not real kids. But all these kids are having a hard time with attendance. And if you want to drill down and see a little bit more details, then you tap on this attendance button up here. And that gives you a pie chart next to every kid. And the pie chart works almost exactly the same. The legend is over here. You might not be able to see it because of my little picture up in the corner on the video, thanks to Zoom. But the green represents being present. And again, being present means being present for the moment. Red represents absent, yellow represents late, and blue represents left class. So let's take a look at Elijah. Elijah's got a little colorful thing here. Now you'll notice that everybody's present most of the time, right? Everybody's present most of the time. But if I tap on Elijah's little pie chart here, it pops out that there were 29 classes since the beginning of the year for a total of 29 hours. Of those, he was present 27 times, totaling 25 minutes and 25 hours and 21 minutes. He was absent twice for a total of 2 hours. He came late 3 times, totaling 19 minutes, and he left 14 times, totaling an hour and 20 minutes. So you get real specific breakdown of the counts and the time totals of the different absences. And obviously that's going to give you a lot of insight into how kids are doing in class. They leaving 14 times in class might be okay. Again, I'm not going to say that any way is good or bad. That I leave up to the teachers. There are a lot of different factors that need to be taken into consideration. But even more than that, let's drill down. Let's drill down into Elijah by tapping on these 3 dots. That means that there's more information here. And here you're going to have a list of all of the events. This is the individual dashboard for Elijah. Okay, now we have here these donut charts, which are the same as the pie charts that we saw before, and you'll see it's basically the same kind of breakdown. Now, the difference between the top one and the bottom one is that the top one is all recorded records. This one will never change. This is just straight up the raw data. You can't do anything about it. The bottom is the filtered record. So if you want to look at a specific time frame by bringing in, let's say you want to bring in the time frame, you want to get rid of the last couple of days. And instead of going from September 9th until now, you want to just you take out a couple of days, October 16th. You want to move the time frame around by playing with this timeline. That's not going to change this top donut, but it will change the bottom one. Now this is reflecting just what I'm looking at. And here is every single event listed with the icon, the name of it, the time, the date, the time, the amount of time that was missed, and everything here. The latenesses can be adjusted here if they were excused or not. So you can make those adjustments. There you go. Oops, make it excused. And you can also filter. If you tap on this bar, you get a little filter. I can look at specific events, at different things. Obviously, we have excused, or we have absent, late. We have all these different things that I can look at. If I want to see how many times the kid's going to the bathroom, I can block out everything except for the bathroom break and slice it and dice it however I want. So that's going to show up all in this bottom pie chart. So you can actually look at the bottom compared to what the full picture is. And then I can slide out this little timeline here. And this is something that I think is really, really nifty, where it's a timeline across the day. And this is going to show you, if somebody comes in late, the yellow is the time that they missed because of late. And obviously the class starts at 10 in the morning. So we're starting here from 10 in the morning, and this is where he came in late. The blue is where a kid, may have left the middle of class. So that's going to show you that. Just give me 1 minute, please. Local gardener doing his usual work. The dark green means that it's a class that the student was there from beginning until end, and that's what that shows. And the red is a class that the student was absent altogether. So again, the light green is a class that the student was present but came in and out. The yellow means that they were late. The blue is different times that they left in the middle of class, and you'll see all of these trendings. It's all in the first 20 minutes or so of class when the student leaves the class. Once Elijah comes back, after 20 minutes, he's pretty much settled until 11 o'clock, until the end of the class. So you get this really, really rich attendance data. And again, you can slice it and dice it however you want. You can filter it. You can select different classes if you have different classes. This is for the demo class, but if the student is in another class, you can select more than one class. You can do that way as well. So there's a lot that you can do here with this. And what this does is that, number one, it kind of seals up the cracks as far as what the trends are. Kids that are missing different times of the year, different times of the day. You can see what the trends are. You can obviously notice it because you have that dashboard every day on the. Let's go back into here again. When you're when you're on the overview dashboard, right when you log into ClassStars in the beginning, you're going to see that little icon, that little attendance here in the snapshot. You're going to see that attendance icon each and every day. Okay, so as soon as this turns yellow, bam, that's gonna tell you right away that there's a problem. Red is when it's 10%. Once you're at 10% of absence, that's chronic absence. That's going to be a problem. So these are some of the ways that we're trying to solve the cracks in the attendance issues. Again, please leave your comments, give me feedback. We want to make this really the most powerful tool for teachers in the world. So with your input, with your help, we definitely can. And tomorrow, looking forward to getting into the second pillar, positive feedback. But this is attendance. Let me know what you think. I hope you found this useful. You can join the Teaching with Positivity group where there's a lot more of this conversation going on. You can download ClassStars for free from the App Store of your iPad, your Google Play, or Microsoft Windows device. And share it with your friends. Tell your colleagues, tell other teachers about this. We're going to be coming out with a subscription model really, really soon, but this basic plan, what you saw here, is going to be for free. You're going to be able to download the app for free and set up a class for free. And if you want to add classes, we'll talk about that another time. But in the meantime, you can do this. This is absolutely free. And I hope you enjoy it. I hope this was a useful conversation for you, and see you tomorrow. Take care. Have a great day.